Holberton School is a community-driven, project-based school that's aiming to train full-stack software engineers. I'm here today to introduce Nicolas Bacca. He is the co-founder and CTO of Ledger, a startup that builds Bitcoin wallets and other security personal devices. Nicolas is going to be talking about how the security of a system equals the security of its weakest link. So now please welcome Nicolas.
So my name is Nicolas Bacca, again. I'm very happy to be here with you. I'm French, as you probably can guess, for some reason, but I guess you are getting used to the French accent by that time, so that's good. Well, I hope you had a wonderful week last week, because I think the school is only open since 1 week. Well, it's a great experience. I'm very happy to be speaking here as well, because I think it's the first time probably that the school has been opened with open intervention like that from the beginning, open courses, and well, that's exciting. And good experiment, so it's nice to be there at the beginning. And today I will be speaking about generic things about security. I want more to introduce you to a mindset than giving you some specific examples of what to do, what not to do. So, well, you will learn some things, I guess. If you are already quite familiar with cybersecurity, you might find some parts a bit boring, but I have funny pictures, so that should make it worth your time. Then a few exercises after, which should be interesting as well. So coding is not really requested, as you will see in the exercises, but might help slightly. So, moving on. So well, that's the first time I'm running that, so I guess it will probably be running around 1 hour, maybe less. The idea is that if you have any question on any slide, don't hesitate to interrupt me. The presentation will be pretty interactive already, but well, any question you have, feel free to just raise your hand and ask. That's okay. So, a few words about me to start. So what I'm doing, I'm CTO at Ledger. We are designing next generation smart cards. So, well, we have started with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is, if you are not familiar with it, Bitcoin is a virtual currency. It's extremely interesting because it's a mix of a lot of different technologies and people. It's mostly about security. There are some people interested in economics. There are anarchists, so it's always nice to have an anarchist in a project because it brings some new perspectives. You have libertarians, so same thing about libertarians. You have people who are pro-state, you have people who are against state, and all those people group together and trying to expand the technology. So it's, well, and it's the first crypto experiment, I would say, that is available for users today. It's probably the most advanced crypto system. And it gave people, for the first time, the opportunity to play with real crypto, so to play with keys, to change keys, to do stuff with keys, and with real-world consequences. So Bitcoin has to be very secure from scratch, because it comes with an automated bug bounty. Let's say you break a Bitcoin system, you get money. So people are very interested to secure the system because they don't want to lose money. So that's why you have a very nice pressure from hackers against the system that gives you motives to secure the system as much as you can. So my background is from the regular smart card industry, that's SIM cards, passports, credit cards, all kind of not very interesting stuff. So I have created several companies in the past working around that, working with SIM cards, working with new crypto systems, designing IoT devices. So the plan, well, the course that I want to give you at Holberton later will be about designing that kind of devices and how this concept can be brought to open source systems. So well, I will speak a little bit about that at the end of the talk. What else? Yeah, so smart cards are the most secure microcontroller that you can find today. If you're from the US, you might not be very familiar with that concept, but your SIM card is a smart card. It's actually a microcomputer that can run applications. Applications written in a subset of Java. So that would be, well, there will be enough to talk about that for a full talk of several hours. So I will just skip that and maybe come to that later in another talk. Let's see. Well, my introduction with security, as I have told you, is mostly in building secure systems. I like to break systems as well, because when you want to build a secure system, it's good to know how to break one. So I am purely white hat. I mean, I am not breaking into other people's stuff, but I like breaking into my own stuff. So typically, well, I was involved with the jailbreaking scene a long time ago. I probably did the first jailbreaks on my Microsoft smartphones, well, probably nobody remembers about those, but Microsoft actually started the first smartphones in 2002. So well, that was a funny experience. Then back onto the iPhone and stuff. Well. And yeah, since I am in a coding school, my coding background, that I said nothing about that here, but it's just funny, so I'm just mentioning it for 5 minutes. As you can see, I am probably older than you, well, 39. So at that time when I started in France, we had, of course, no internet, no BBS, no nothing. So you might wonder, how do you get interested with computing, I mean, by that time, when you didn't have all those people connected and all that code that you could look at. And the nice thing in France is that you could look at code, actually, in newspaper. That sounds completely surreal, probably, for you. But you could actually go in a library and buy a newspaper every week that listed code that you could type. So yeah, it was quite interesting because most of the time the code was full of bugs. So you learn how to get a nice game and you learn how to debug at the same time. So you basically bought that paper every week that come with funny pictures as well. So well, it was a nice incentive to code. And you wrote your stuff, and if you were lucky, you ended up with a game. If you were not lucky, you wasted 4 hours typing stuff. But it was a very nice incentive to learn to code in BASIC, in assembly language, for a lot of different architectures. So, well, of course, all those architectures are long dead, but the concept, I think, of having that newspaper, the name of the newspaper was Logiciel for the French people around there who are old enough, so that's probably nobody, but okay. Well, if you can find, I didn't put a picture, but if you can look for it, you'll see it's, well, it's an interesting concept. I think it might be something worth resurrecting. Well, just for fun, I mean, a journal about code that people can actually read and type, and that's funny. So, that was for my a bit long introduction. Now, the idea of the weakest link about that presentation. Well, the idea is that you don't want to be the designer of that for obvious reasons, because it's not very secure. When I show this picture, it looks absolutely obvious, but most of the time you will end up with those situations in real life that don't look like this. So your system might actually be as secure as this, but in a less obvious way, which is, of course, more dangerous. Because for other people, it will actually look like that, but for some people, or most people, it will look like something secure. So it's very important to, well, to be aware of the real security of your system and to not worry to ask people to test it and to ask yourself questions all the time. And the main point about security, if you have to remember one thing about security, you just have to remember my chart. The idea is that you must not trust anything, you must verify everything you do. So that's why open source is very important as well, because it gives you an opportunity to actually know what you are running and what you are doing. So how do we get to that? Because of course nobody ever asks you to design this. So let's say you start a nice project. Well, project is about here. Well, it's not necessarily a gun, but you get the idea. You have a nice project, you have a nice specification, everything looks fine, shiny, extremely modern, extremely well designed. It's on paper, it's your project, it's nice, I would say. It's something that looks like you want to buy, it's something that looks very secure, very optimized. And, well, project goes on, you start working on it, a few years pass, well, a few months if you're lucky, because there are some projects who last for a few years, and in the end, you end up with this. Which is still a gun. Well, let's say it still does stuff. It looks a bit less futuristic. But the idea here is that it's an assembly of things that come from different teams. I mean, the most important part of that is not that it's made of chopsticks. I have nothing against chopsticks. It's not that it's a gun. It's that you will find a lot of rubber band everywhere. And this is what makes a software project. Software project is a lot of parts who are tied together. And usually problems happen at those points because well, people either didn't talk to each other, or people either don't exactly know what they were doing, they were just copying and pasting code which works, so that's fine, it works, it has worked for 10 years, 15 years, that's nice code, we can take it, we can move on. And that's where, well, that's where problems occur. So that's a reality of all projects, you can't really do anything against it. And you can every day try to bring it back to your original version of the project, but in most situations, you have to be aware that this is what you will end up doing. So you will have to maintain that, and you will have to make sure that this stays as secure as possible. And of course, well, most of the time, it will also be late. So it will be, well, a gun made of chopsticks and rubber bands and late. Okay. And so that's important because, as I said, security happens when you tie together different branches of the system, because details are the most important part of it. Security is about finding a spot where you can attack the system and from there move to another part of the system. So that's very typical for network security. I mean, you have seen people that enter a network from, like, I don't know, who are sending a phone call, who are sending a mail to someone. From there, they can jump to a generic workstation, to another workstation with more privileges, then to a server, then to the full network, and so on and so on. But it's exactly the same for software. So that's an extremely important thing to realize. Let's say you are into your web browser. If you have an exploit that can enter your web browser, people might find a way to escalate from the web browser to the system, then from the system to the kernel, then from the kernel to drivers, then if you are really unlucky, from drivers to the BIOS, and well, then you start having real problems with typically malware that you cannot delete. I mean, that has happened in the past. People have shown that you have ways to infect actually the firmware of your computer, and you can imagine some nightmares about a keylogger that you cannot delete. That already occurred. That's something that has been demonstrated, and well, of course, mostly in the lab. But saying that today you have people who have a strong incentive to do bad stuff like that and to snoop on people, that's something that cannot be rolled out. So security is extremely important to consider that even if you are working on your project on a very small part, everybody has to be aware of that, and everybody has to do his part to make sure that you will not be that spot that allows people to move on to another spot, and so on and so on and so on. So if you, well, I would say if you are interested in that kind of game, and if you want to know more about that, I would recommend you get familiar with what happens in phone unlocking, because today jailbreaking is about that. Phones are about the most secure generic computer platform that you can find today. They are way more secure than your computers or game consoles. But phones are less expensive than game consoles and probably more, more familiar to you. So if you like that kind of stuff, you can read a bit more about, well, phone security. But to get into details of what I want to speak about today, so that mindset, let's say first something about security and privacy, because they look sometimes like different concepts. People will tell you, okay, well, security is about security of your system, privacy is about the privacy of your users. But when you look into it, you see that it's kind of similar. It refers to the same skill sets. When you are interested by that, you will see a lot of cryptography, you will see a lot of full understanding of your system, which is important. And if something looks different here, let's say if someone can brute force your password, it's a security issue. If someone can read your mail, it's a privacy issue. But if you have a password in your mail, which happens more often than we think, then a privacy issue becomes a security issue, and it works both ways actually. So it's important as well when you design your project from the beginning to think about security and to think about privacy, because, well, I don't think I have to remind you that privacy is attacked basically everywhere on the internet today, and it should be a mandatory component of every project that is, that will have end users, because if you cannot guarantee this, it's not up to the user to work on that. You should make it easy for the user to keep his privacy, and you should make your project secure. So let's start with an interactive example. Very simple. I think everybody will be reminded of something. You are logging to Gmail. Let's discuss the potential vulnerabilities. let's see. So where do you see problems here? I was, well, specifically not speaking about the environment, but let's speak about the environment. So what do you have in? Yes?
I mean, I would say stay scientific would be like the most thing that jumps to me.
Yeah, that's a good comment. Yes, that's a good comment.
Well, you can't see the URL, so it might not be Google.
Yes, right?
Keyloggers.
Also, yes.
Well, like, there's no picture, so maybe you can't verify your right account. Right, actually.
Oh yeah, you mean like verifying that you have that you are logging on the right? Yes.
SSL.
Hmm?
SSL.
Yes. SSL. Yes.
Would it be one account for all of Google? Like,
Google work a bit like that.
okay.
I mean, yeah, when you log into different Google systems, you log into your Google account and you have access to mail, to calendar. Okay, yeah, so that was some points, well, which were interesting, and I am talking about them. But let's add perhaps a few more details. If you want to ask yourself how you are connected to the network. Let's say if you are using Wi-Fi or wired connection, you can be attacked in different ways. If you are on a wired connection, basically you have to trust your provider. If you're on Wi-Fi, you have to trust a lot of different things. You have to verify that you are on the right access point. You have to verify that you are well connected to the right website, because someone could completely spoof everything you want on Wi-Fi. So you could have connected to a different DNS, you could have, well, I have seen some pretty crazy stuff. I mean, there have been reports about people, well, the most crazy stuff I have seen about Wi-Fi was some guys who wanted to attack a place and did a demo of that. They put on a Wi-Fi access point on a drone, actually put the drone closer to from the original access point, well, that the guy wanted to connect to, and overpowered the original access point with that, and just logged the guy to a website which was redirecting the DNS and getting the password from there. So again, that's something that's completely done in a lab. Just to think about Wi-Fi, well, when you are on Wi-Fi, everybody can do everything. So you have to trust DNS, and DNS cannot be trusted by, well, more or less.
Can you explain, very fast, like in a few words, what DNS is? Because I think most of the
okay, yeah, DNS is what happens when you enter google.com. The idea is DNS is a layer that will do the resolution between google.com and the actual IP. So if everything goes well, when you enter www.google.com, you end up on Google server. One of Google servers, because Google is not serving the world from a single server. They could, but well. So when you do that, that's the expected behavior now. If someone is giving you the address of a rogue DNS server, they can direct you everywhere. So this can be a very nice attack to, for example, redirect you to a site which is maintained by the attacker, to actually grab your passwords and redirect you transparently to Google. So you might not even notice, if you are not extremely careful of checking certificates and so on, that you are not on Google. About checking certificates, if you're familiar with SSL, you might think, because some people think that if you see the nice padlock, if you see the nice green bar on your browser, it's okay, you're secure. Well, it just means that you are on a valid SSL website. So if someone today triggers you to go somewhere, well, it doesn't work with Google, because Google has some additional security solutions.
Take notes and add sound off.
No problem. That will get really tricky when the Super Bowl starts next week, but no, that's fine. So yeah, so Google can redirect you to, you can check that you are actually on Google, because Google is pinning its certificate, which means on Chrome that if someone tries to spoof you, try to tell you, okay, I'm Google with a bad SSL certificate, the website the browser itself will notify you that you are not on the real Google. But that's because they are privileged. I mean, a lot of websites don't do that pinning, so you might end up with something that looks secure, valid, but is in fact a valid rogue certificate set up by the attacker. So that can be confusing, and of course that's extremely confusing for the user. So that was just about network attacks. Then someone could be listening, because if you're on Wi-Fi, your ISP can be listening. If you're on a wired network, your ISP or everybody in between you and your router or your ISP can listen. If you're on Wi-Fi, it's not very different. I mean, you don't really know. QUIZZ on the other point. And then, well, the most stupid thing of all, if you know a bit about SMTP, maybe not yet, but well, the main protocol is based on features of the internet that dates back from like the beginning of the internet. So you might have a very fancy website, a very fancy, well, SSL connection, second factor, and so on and so on. In the end, you are still sending an email, and an email today, using the most common configuration of the internet, is about as secure as a postcard. So if you want to send something in an email and you don't want people to read it, you should encrypt it. You should at least be aware that it's as secure as a postcard. So you don't want to send your bank account typically, or even worse in the US, your social security number in an email, like never. So that's something, well, that's just something to remember. In case you think that, well, Google is fancy, Google is secure, yes, the website is secure. What happens after when you will send that mail to actually someone else, that's a completely different story. So that was the network. Now locally, and everybody has been talking about the different points, so that's cool. So keyloggers, malware, phishing, and, well, actually the physical environment. So, well, I started with malwares because part of the keylogging thing, but if you think about what a malware can do, that's easy. You can consider that a malware can do anything. By the escalation principle that I talked about a bit in the beginning, you can assume that the malware can sit into Chrome itself, aside in the operating system, so you can end up with a completely indetectable keylogger. Again, that will not happen to, well, to most people, but if you are targeted, as you have seen, well, some recent stories about some people leaking documents and so on and so on, that can definitely happen to you. I'm not telling you that that's what is going to happen, but still, when thinking about how to design your product and thinking about malwares, the user should be aware that this is a risk, and you should make sure to minimize that kind of risk, because they cannot really be avoided. So everybody can be at risk, and one of the biggest ways today to spread malware to users' computer is not through emails, downloads, viruses. I mean, that was what people were doing previously. You were just downloading something on the torrent, well, because it's expensive. Then you run it on your computer and you get some malware. So, well, that was before. Now it's way more sneaky and way more interesting. You are just browsing a website. Someone has infected the ad server with some, with some sophisticated attack. The ad server is spreading malware, which is exploiting another bug in the browser, and you end up with a very nice distribution platform for malware that can target millions of users from a single website. So attackers, like all good engineers, are lazy, and if you can attack 1 million users by compromising one website, that's definitely the way to go, because it's much easier than...
Very quick question on the malware. What's the reason people do malware? What's the main reason? Is it, for instance, to infect the computers and have them become zombie, to do some, I don't know, blockchain mining, or what would be the main reasons according to your experience?
Well, today, I would say before that was worth something, because people were creating those malware to create zombies, like you said, so to create botnets, and those botnets could be used to mostly attack other people. So people were doing that to move from other things, to sell, for example, resources for denial of service attacks. Bots are quite inexpensive to buy. I think people can buy, like, I don't exactly remember the hash power, but I think you can buy some things that will bring down the most website for one day for about $100 or something like this. So yeah, no, the market's dark. On the dark web, I mean, there is a very nice market for DDoS, which is quite inexpensive. But something that I have seen more recently, so of course you have people who just want to spy on, as I said, specific targeted users, but that's not very widespread. I have seen some kind of those exploits for targeting banking websites mostly. So people who are interested to get banking credentials and from there attack the website, attack the bank accounts themselves. That's not very interesting, because when banks notice that people do that, well, they usually shut off the account. So that's easy to counterattack. But one of the very growing and that I noticed recently interesting reason for people to install malware was to install what I would say ransomware, what I would call ransomware. So like CryptoLocker, for example. So some malware that will encrypt your files and then ask you to pay something to get your files back. And that's getting incredibly popular. Unfortunately for us, a lot of people do that with Bitcoin because, well, Bitcoin is harder to trace, so well, that's a good business model. Actually, well, I think some of those guys have been arrested, but not all of them. They are from Eastern countries, so nothing about, well, Eastern countries, but that's something you will see in malware. You have a lot of bored people from Russia writing malware. That's a fact. Well, so those guys are quite sophisticated. They have set up, for example, a phone line that you can call when you can't pay, when you don't know exactly how to pay your ransom. Someone will answer the phone and actually guide you to where to buy Bitcoin, how to pay, and so on and so on. So yeah, that's quite a sophisticated industry today. And I am seeing people with having that kind of malware on their computer like 4 or 5 times a week for 1 year. So yeah, it's getting, I think that's getting a real problem. And you probably have the same thing like spamming your contact after that, or Facebook, or attacking your Facebook account. So people put a new point on, well, attacking your data or shaming you into paying the malware attacker to get some revenue. And it seems to be the booming revenue model, I would say, for malware those last few years. Phishing, well, phishing before was just, you got an email written in some weird English, you clicked on it because you are not really paying attention, and then you enter your password. And that was phishing from the past, I would say. Phishing that might still work on your grandmother, but, well, now we are doing something way more sophisticated. People are doing something way more sophisticated than that. So first you can start from basically everywhere. I mean, everybody's connected today, so your phishing link can come from a website, can come from a forum. You might not even know that the link has been opened when you click on it because you were just clicking on something and, well, it opened some stuff. And one of the most sophisticated and interesting attacks that I have seen is called time napping. So that's a generic concept for it. It's already quite old. I think it has a few, it's maybe 5 or 10 years old, but it's still quite effective. You just create a fake tab on the browser, on the browser of the victim, and you display your stuff on this fake tab. And, well, that doesn't look very efficient when you look at it that way. But in fact, it's extremely efficient because it relies on just you making a mistake a bit later, walking back to your browser, finding a nice tab, whoa, that's my Google inbox, and typing your password here. But in fact, it's not at all it's not at all Google, it's just someone that used JavaScript to insert a tab, to create a new tab, put something that is absolutely not a website into it, and wait for you to come in and type stuff. So that's clever, and that's one of the most effective phishing technique I have seen. Well, then there is targeting phishing, of course, when people who know who you are talking to usually would send some email that look like you are talking to the same people and will force you to do something. So either enter your password, send money, or whatever. So, but you know probably about that, and you know that, well, you have to be careful about email, especially when something is asking you something that is rather unusual. You probably don't have people asking you for money every day. Well, you know how to pay attention. The physical environment, which is easily dismissed, but unfortunately, well, if you find a USB key, you shouldn't put it into your computer. That's the first thing to say. I wanted to have some nice demonstration about that, but well, I couldn't make it physically, so that would be a bit later, and maybe for a cool project as well during the year. The idea is that USB is a very versatile protocol. USB can do a lot of things, and if it looks like a USB key, it's not necessarily a USB key. One of the nice attacks I have seen as well was a device that looks like a very innocent USB key. You plug it into your computer. In fact, it's not a USB key, it's a keyboard. So the keyboard will just ask your computer to reboot. When your computer reboots, the device itself has a timer and turns itself into a CD-ROM because, well, CD-ROM is also mass storage, it's also part of the USB specification, so the device can turn into a CD-ROM. From there, it boots on the CD-ROM. Yeah, it's a CD-ROM, so it can boot to the CD-ROM. Then it turns back into a keyboard, and, well, you see the point. The device can change itself and can emulate different USB devices, and most of the time your operating system is already configured to recognize all those devices. So you don't really know what is going to happen. It might not just be something that you insert and then click on a bad link and end up with a malware. It can be way more, well, tricky than this, as you can see. Typical thing from the security, from the physical environment as well, well, that's quite obvious, but the funny part about that link is that that's actually a documentary about designing voting machines in Estonia. So people did some research into the voting machine designers, and they found out that the voting machines were not very secure, and even that their OPSEC was beyond, beyond everything that can be said, because this is, when you zoom on it, this is actually an SSID. So, that's to say, it can look stupid like that, but you don't want to be making that kind of mistakes as well. Some, short break in the presentation, very, very short. Taking an example of popular attacks that have been, I think, quite weird those last years, and stuff that is real competition for the Hollywood movies that you are used to see. So, this is unique according to Jurassic Park, I think. If you have passed, if you have spent already 1 week here, you probably know that Unix is not looking like that, because otherwise that's kind of a weird version. But we are getting very, very similar to what we see in the movies today, and that's a bit frightening. So, if you're familiar about STUXNET, or maybe not, STUXNET is interesting. That's the first example of a state, well-documented state malware that was designed to attack physical architecture. From what people think today, it was a joint effort between the US and Israel to attack the nuclear plant in Iran. So that's the most generic, that's the most generic conclusion I think that people have today on StuxNet. The idea is that it combined a set of exploits, so most of them were completely unknown at that time, to escalate again from a USB key to a computer, to a network of computers, to a specialized system that actually regulated some part of the power plant, and to make it run into conditions that would break it. So the point is that it escalated all the way to the industrial system to actually destroy things in a way that could have a lot of bad consequences, because usually when you mess with an uranium activity, bad things can happen. So that was a bit reckless, but that was quite interesting to see that you can escalate all the way to those PLCs.
Quick question, is that the one where they infected the spin of the reactors?
Yeah.
The spin of the device?
Exactly that one.
Yeah.
Spin, yeah, I was looking for the word.
Yeah, and it all started when, they figured out like who were going into those plants, and dropping out the USB key on their way to the plant.
I think there was a
One day,
document.
one or two guys grabbed the keys and
Yeah.
I think
And
it's
from there it
documented.
escalated from workstation to network, from network to other USB keys, from USB keys to the PLC. So that was quite impressive, and that was eyes-opening for an entire industry, because all those people designing PLCs, so the controllers, to physical, I would say mechanical controllers, so who are running code, so who are running firmware, so who can be attacked. Because today we live in a world where everything can be patched for, economical reasons. You don't want to deploy systems in the wild that cannot be patched, because that will be totally not cost effective. So if it can be patched, it can run a new firmware. If it can run a new firmware, a lot of people don't pay proper attention to security. You end up with that situation. So it was really eye-opening for that industry, which completely didn't consider security, and suddenly realized that their systems could be connected to the internet by some ways they didn't think about. So that's, whole escalade of USB keys from other things. So one security group typically has been playing a lot with different SCADA vulnerabilities. Their name is SCADA Strangelove, so from the movie Dr. Strangelove. And if you are interested into that, you can refer to their different presentations they made. It's quite educative. They have demonstrated that people, there are a lot of completely insecure systems managing critical facilities all over the world, completely well there, and with a security that dates back to the 90s in the best conditions most of the time. So that's a nice example of something that you could see in a movie. Another one, which is a bit less well known, but maybe you're familiar with it. Name of that vulnerability, which is not really a vulnerability, more like a state default, is dual EC DRBG. That's the name of the random generator. The purpose of a random generator is to generate proper random. A proper random is random that looks, well, random, but that's easy, because if I give you a short set of numbers, they can be completely random, but I could have a generator myself, you don't really know. So there are a lot of statistical studies to demonstrate that on a given set of random numbers, they are truly random, but that's, I would say, quite complicated. And our friends at the NSA managed to find a way to infiltrate more or less a standard and try to push a random generator on which they had some ways to predict what the random could be. So this is of course very bad, because it means that everything that was generated by this generator could be reversed by some state business. So this is, well, what they call in their jargon a no-bus backdoor, no-bus as in nobody but us. Problem is, well, when you say nobody but us, but your backdoor is revealed, everybody can read it. So it's a major problem with backdoors and why backdoors are not working. If you rely on secrets, if your secret is leaked at some point, well, everybody can use your backdoor and your system is completely critically compromised, and that this cannot be fixed. So it was revealed, it was widespread. We are still saying some. Have we managed to say? We are still seeing some events related to this. So right again today, I think part of the recent drama with some firewall provider that I forgot, Juniper Networks, I think, is related to that. So we are still seeing some reports of that problem, which was revealed in 2013. So another thing demonstrated by that it's hard to break good cryptography. So people think sometimes that the state agencies have a lot of power at their disposal, and that they can break everything, they're all powerful. No, they are not. So the good cryptographic algorithms that we have are designed to be specifically hard to break. And that's why it's much more easier to compromise either their initial conditions, so to make them breakable by tweaking them in a way that makes them weaker, or to just attack other things. So attack, for example, where, again, you have a point of weakness. So in the algorithm selection, for example. So it's an example for another attack, which might be a bit complicated to describe, but that's very related to a set of recent attacks on cryptography to make security and privacy weaker. So again, well, that would make a good movie scenario, I think, maybe not very interesting. That one is the weirdest one I have heard about, like 2 years ago. It's actually a bug that works on, well, that is based on the physical design of memory chips. So the way memory chips are designed, you have a set of, I will remember how to say condensator in English at some point. But the way memory DRAMs is designed, you have to refresh it periodically. And as people have moved into more dense DRAMs and more memory into the stick, they made some compromise on the physical design, which means that some error can happen from time to time if you read the same rows in memory in a given pattern. And people have reverse engineered those properties given the different implementation of the different manufacturers and found a way to actually trigger those errors at will. So from code, the idea is that if you keep reading the same cells of memory again and again and again in a given sequence, you might trigger a physical effect that will affect another bit in another area of the memory that is completely unrelated. So that's a totally critical bug, because that lets you bypass a lot of well, protection that could be in your system. For example, if one of the bits you manage to flip is your privilege, you can end up getting root just by reading the right part of memory in the right sequence. That's an awful summary for a very complicated problem, but you see the issue. So that's a part of a design that was overlooked, that dates back from ages ago, basically from the design of the first memory chip. That design was completely overlooked at the beginning because it didn't look critical at all. So of course it wasn't very common, so that's why ECC memory was created, so memory is an additional error correction. People say, okay, that's a cosmic ray, that's whatever, we don't really know why from time to time your memory gets corrupted. But as we move forward as an industry designing better memory chip, that problem got worse, and at some point it got critical and turned into a security bug when people figured that it could be triggered at will. So again, a nice example of how a problem that looks absolutely not important in the beginning can turn out into a critical vulnerability a few years later. Well, let's get back to more real security issues. That was the fun part, but yeah, now that comes from some boring part. That's the thread that you will see in the code that you are designing today and in the code that you are reading. So, misconfigurations, SQL injection, code execution. Well, that's a good summary of the different problems you can find. So, misconfiguration, of course, that's totally obvious, but you still have to be quite careful about what you're doing. So if, for example, you're deploying a nice application server and you don't really know what you are deploying, you can end up deploying something that can be accessed remotely and that people can use to either do bad things on your server or steal some data or, well, worse parts. So that's, I guess, something you will learn when you start deploying some very complex things with Java that nobody really knows exactly what runs inside, but well, that you will know because you have been at this presentation, so you know that you have to verify what you run.
I think it happened already for those who installed, I think, Redis. We had a bug and somebody from outside managed to get access to the Redis server because the configuration was not...
Oh yeah, so that's good. Well, that's not good, but you see the idea.
Yeah, you wrote the paper up there.
Oh.
That's this type of vulnerability.
Well, another very common thing, SSH with passwords. I mean, we are 2016 today, why do you want to do SSH? Why do you want to use SSH with a password? You can use SSH with keys, it's better. At least people will have more trouble guessing your keys than guessing your password. So if at one point you see a server somewhere with password SSH enabled, just remove it. That's a very, well, it's a very generic comment, but this is the idea. Misconfiguration can also happen on the client side. For example, if you forget to update an application, you might be vulnerable to attacks that exploit old versions of software and, well, manage to infiltrate your system using this as an access point. So updates are completely part of the security process and should not be overlooked. So that's updates for a server that looks very common, for a user not necessarily. So something to think about. SQL injections, sorry if it's if it sounds very common for most people here. But the idea is that if you want to access something in a database, you enter SQL commands, so you enter basically, well, commands to the system that tell you, find me a user here in a row. If you don't properly, if you basically write something here, and if instead of your username you write, okay, I am Mr. Everybody, well, you end up being able to run commands in the database. When you see that, you think, okay, well, who would do something like this? Well, apparently in 2016, Joomla, WordPress, Cacti, and other people are still doing that. So that just, if you end up touching a database at some point, you might want to check how you are accessing it and how you are actually sending comments to your database. I am here, well, you will see why I'm not saying the magic words, because I have a slide about that, the next one actually. Code execution, something that looks a bit magical when you are not aware of exactly how it works. The idea is that because you have some bugs in your program, people can inject code into your code that will actually change the way it runs. So the idea is that you have a program that lives its happy program life, running things. Someone will arrive, send an input command. The input command will actually be binary code that can be executed by the program, and this will replace the actual program behavior. So it's something that is extremely old as well. You have several ways to mitigate it. When you code, especially in a low-level language, you have to follow some guidelines to make sure that you are immune from that kind of problems. But still, well, just something to keep in mind. Now, the interesting slide. Well, why do we have those problems today? Speaking about SQL injection and code execution. So, any guesses? Yes?
Software just doesn't do what you want it to all the time.
Yeah, but more precisely, I mean, what lets you do that, actually?
Yeah, mistakes on the developer's part? Designing the software?
Yes, but more specifically.
Maybe like how it was designed from the beginning and they didn't have in mind like the vulnerability that could come about in the future?
Not exactly.
State that changes over time.
In state of what?
The system in this case, I guess.
Yes. More specifically?
This one might be a stretch, but general computing, the fact that we can run any software on any, basically that you can run any piece of code onto a software that was, a hardware that was not designed for it, maybe the
Yeah. I mean, it would be a way to prevent it. Yeah, if you work into a system, if you run on a system on which only, for example, code that you approve can run, yeah, that's a way to solve it. But that's not really the root of the problem.
Could it be connectivity or the fact that code can be changed and it's not hard-coded, so to speak, into hardware?
Yes. And then what? Okay, then I will give us some hint.
I think the root of the problem is the human who is writing code, and the human are not perfect, so then the code is not perfect.
Yeah, but so yeah, it's close to. I mean, according to the picture, it's close to that, but that's actually not a picture of the developer.
Oh, almost.
But very close.
It's just the user and how
Yes.
they use the system.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the user. So the point is, when you get user input and when you send user input into your system, you should always make sure that your user input is what you expect. Because if you don't make any kind of check, or if you make bad checks, people will send bad things, either by mistake or, well, because they want to exploit your system and because they want to look for bugs into your system. We had, I think, a few weeks, maybe months ago, an interesting bug like that on Screen on Unix. I think it was Screen, or some login, some version of login on some system, where people realized that they could actually escape the sandbox. I think maybe it was Grub, by hitting backspace like 17 times, because when you did that, people were not bomb checking properly, and you ended up with some extremely weird, again, escalate of problems that let you trigger a code execution vulnerability that let you execute something. But when you read it like you can break Unix by hitting backspace 17 times, people would just say, okay, you're crazy. Well, no, that can happen. So how do you prevent that on the design part? You will have some guidelines in your framework, so if you do C, you will learn well how to avoid, how to check bounds in your variable. You can run some tools like Valgrind, for example. If you are more doing some web things, there are guidelines, so I was just referring to OWASP, but there might be more recent guidelines today. The idea is that, well, that's a problem that's age-old, so it's pretty much documented for all frameworks. And on the attack part, which is extremely interesting to do as well, you want to do that yourself. So you want to throw a lot of completely meaningless input on your program into your program and see how it reacts. That's a good way to check that you have actually validated everything that you could validate. So that specific part of security is called fuzzing. So you are going to, you can fuzz your code in a very stupid way, so you can just throw anything that you comes, well, into your mind and see what happens. But you have some programs like AFL here that does that a bit in a more smart way. So you take your source code, you take your input, and AFL will generate some meaningful fuzzing, so some parameters that actually try to trigger some special conditions in your code, and that will try to go through every branch of your code by analyzing it before and iterating on that. So you have some extremely powerful tools just to throw at your system and to see how it reacts after it's written and after it's deployed. So both should be used today. I think when you design code, you should be aware of the problem, and after you design, when you test your code, you should use that kind of tools. Denial of service, which is not really a security vulnerability, but just, well, speaking about it from usage vulnerability, what it will look like for you as a developer, it will not really look like a denial of service. It will look like that. So that, that's Saint-Lazare station in Paris in 2013. It will look like a lot of people are coming and want to use your system. Well, that might be on purpose, that might be because they want to crash you. You don't really know. I mean, you're just the developer, so it's not your business to deal with that kind of security problems. So usually the DDoS, the DOS, more exactly, will be mitigated at an upper layer, if they can. So that upper layer could be, well, your system administrator could be your ISP, could be someone else. If it has not been mitigated and the denial of service arrives up to you, to what you manage as a developer, most of the time it's already too late. But still, that's a problem that you can solve with graceful, I would say, scalability. If your system just gets slower when you get a large number of users using it instead of crashing, of course it helps. But that comes with a general security view of knowing how your system reacts. So if you know the life cycle of your application, if you know, for example, if you are capable of saying, okay, my system is scaling up to 10 users, up to 100 users, up to 1,000 users, and I know exactly how much resources, CPU resources, RAM, and so on, my system is going to use. If that amount of people arrive, that's where you can start preventing that kind of problem. Or at least you can give the information to the right people and say, okay, I know that this system can scale up to 1,000 users, and well, if 1,001 arrive, everything will burn. No, usually it doesn't work that way, but well, you get the idea. So that's still something, you can do some stuff about it, not too much, but you can still do something. Now, another part of security, very important for security and privacy as well, cryptography. If you are not familiar with crypto, what follows is an extremely simple tutorial about some generic principles about crypto, because crypto can be intimidating. Well, that's more or less the actual view of a cryptographer. I've met a few who look pretty much like that. So cryptography, that's a bit related to information security, but that applies very well to cryptography as well. It's a set of fuzzy things that will let you work in those following areas. So confidentiality, integration, authentication, non-repudiation. Confidentiality is, let's do it that way. What is confidentiality, in your opinion?
Only a party that you give permission to know your identity, knows your identity, and no one else.
So not your identity, but your data, the data you are sending in a more general way. But yes, that's it.
Then what?
What you are sending. So it can apply to anything. I would say not necessarily your identity, but it's just saying I want to send a message to someone. Confidentiality is what makes sure that nobody in the middle can see your message. Integrity.
That you can't is that you demonstrate that it hasn't changed, that it's
Yes. That's the idea. Yeah. Integrity is verifying that your data has not been modified by someone else. So that's adjacent to confidentiality, you see, but different. Authentication is easy, And non-repudiation is, well, saying that you have something that proves that you did, that you actually did something. So that's like signing, for example. Signing in real life is a non-repudiation because, well, if someone checks your signature, of course. So signing is saying, okay, I did that, and I can prove, someone can prove that at some point I did that because I signed that paper. Non-repudiation will be equivalent of that, but with cryptography too, so with math. So, among the different use cases of cryptography, we will find symmetric key cryptography, which is quite old. So symmetric key cryptography is the most common things people think about when they think about cryptography. You have a key, both parties have the same key, and that key is used to encrypt a message between both parties. So party A is typically called Alice, well, here, first party. The second party is typically called Bob, because A and B, and because cryptographers, cryptographers are very inspired when they make that kind of drawings. And the person in the middle is typically called Eve as well, for eavesdropper, because she is listening. So, but today Eve is on holiday and she has been replaced for some years by Natalie, Sandra, and André. Sorry, that's because yeah, group of 3 people. Well. But you get the idea. The sender will encrypt things using the symmetric key, the receiver decrypts things using the same key, symmetric key, and people in the middle cannot see anything because, well, because they don't know the key and maybe they don't know the algorithm, but the strongest part of cryptography is that even if you know the algorithm, and you should know the algorithm, if you don't have the key, you can't do anything. Asymmetric key cryptography is more recent. So, symmetric key cryptography, maybe you heard about the algorithms before, like DES or AES, well, that's symmetric. Asymmetric, that's RSA, for example, is asymmetric key cryptography. The idea is that you have a private and a public key that have opposite roles. So opposite here means, doesn't mean much, but you will see after that, well, you will see after that what I mean more specifically. First we say that the private key is considered to be your property. So you never leak your private key. Your public key, that's okay, that's public, that's not secret, you can give it to anybody. And what you do with the private key can be undone with the public key. That's more or less the idea of saying opposite roles. So, yeah, sorry, I went slightly before that. Third important part of a cryptographic system, a hash function. So a hash function will turn any kind of message into what is called a hash or a condensate that will have a fixed size based on the message algorithm and based on the hash algorithm. And that will give you an identifier of that message. So typically used for integrity. Then, a very, very silly question about that. Is it a one-way function? Please.
Should be.
It should be. Yeah, it should be. Yeah. It should be because otherwise it means you have found the best compression system in the world. That can turn any message of any size into a message of the same size and then turn it back into the message of the original message. So yes, it's a one-way function. The idea is that footprint that you get is supposed to give you enough entropy to identify uniquely the message that you are throwing at it. But of course, it's not a compression function, so it's just used for identification. Now, we talked about confidentiality, we talked about asymmetric key cryptography. How do you achieve confidentiality with asymmetric key cryptography? So as I said, to put back the pieces together, both keys have opposite roles, so private, public. What one key does, the other key can undo. So now, how do you do confidentiality from that? Yes?
So, if you want to send a message to someone, you use the public key to encrypt it, and that means that only the person with the private key can decrypt it.
That's right. So that's confidentiality. Now, how do you achieve non-repudiation?
Can you remind everyone what non-repudiation is?
Non-repudiation is giving up a proof, so the proof can be extremely public, that you did something.
Giving proof?
Yeah, like you have a cryptographic proof, so you can someone that sees that proof can know that you were the only one that did something.
Don't you could like set your username and your email or
No.
okay.
If they somehow engage the message with their private key, then you should be able to use their public key.
Exactly.
To confirm what's that.
Yes, exactly. So that's the two parts. That's how the two parts of the system work. So encryption, when you want to encrypt something to someone, you encrypt with their public key. When you want to sign something, so when you want to prove something, you encrypt with your private key, because then everybody that has your public key can decrypt it, so that's public, so that's a proof. So that's why asymmetric cryptography is, well, an interesting concept as it's quite strong, because it can be used in both ways. I mean, you could do that with symmetric cryptography, but that would be a bit stupid, because it would mean that everybody has to have your secret key to be able to read your message. There are some workarounds about that with key derivation and so on, but still, asymmetric cryptography is much more, it's better suited to achieve, well, to support non-repudiation and signatures for that. Now, you won't be designing a lot of crypto systems in your life, most probably never, because, well, almost nobody designs cryptographic system if you don't consider the guy that, well, you saw the picture before. So those guys design the system and then you can use them. It doesn't mean that they are easy to use. So that's one extremely critical part about cryptography. The algorithms work well in a given set of conditions. And typically, one of those given set of conditions for most of those algorithms is that at some point, they rely on random, they rely on a proper random source. And if you feed them with bad random, well, like this illustration shows, you break things. Because at different levels, for example, you may end up with keys that are predictable, or you might end up with messages that are predictable, or just with a generally weaker algorithm. So that's an easy thing to check, but that's also an easy thing to compromise. So rather than compromising the algorithm, people can be trying to compromise its inputs to make it work into conditions where the algorithm is weaker than it should, well, than it should be. So that's always something to validate. When you want to use a cryptographic algorithm, you have to read the preconditions extremely carefully and make sure that people have been using them properly. Because, well, we will see that for most cases, you have a lot of bad crypto around. I just don't mean bad crypto code. You have a lot of bad crypto practices laying around with people telling you, okay, you can just do it that way. But unfortunately, that way was proven to be completely insecure like 10 years ago, and it's still around in the internet because, well, because it's crypto and crypto is complicated. And when you see something encrypted, it just looks encrypted. And it's hard to say, okay, that was not something you should do because as an observer, you don't really know that. So, as I said, never, never, ever design your own crypto system. Even if it looks very secure, that will be one of the exercises. Well, it will not look really secure, but you'll see when you see it. If you don't see a way to break it, it doesn't mean that nobody can break it. That's really the golden word in cryptography. So just stick to algorithms, to public, well-audited, and, well, algorithms and good implementations, of course, but at least public algorithms, because otherwise, you are running into problems for sure. That's guaranteed. You have to keep yourself informed because, well, things change. So again, some algorithms that were very popular a few years ago can be completely broken a few years later. And you just have to read and to make sure that you are doing the right thing. So an example that's getting popular in the crypto circles, something called the ECB Penguin. because the example was given using the Linux Penguin. So you see here an encryption of an image using a method to cipher a large message, to encrypt a large message with blocks and no feedbacks. So the blocks are just encrypted one after the other and put back together when they are encrypted. You can see that even if it looks secure, when you just see the random bytes and when you just see the thing encrypted, if you look at the content of the image here, you can still recognize, well, the generic shape, and if you are really, really careful, you can almost recognize your favorite hippocampus. Seahorse, yeah. So you can actually recognize it. So that's just to give an example. Here it's an image, but if you have messages here, it means that people from different messages can start to extract information from what you exchanged, and that's very bad usually, because you don't want your crypto system to leak information. The most critical part of a crypto system is that it's supposed to keep information secure if it's supposed to be used for confidentiality. So that's an example of a common practice ECB that turned out to be completely insecure, but that is still taught in school. I mean, people will still tell you, okay, this algorithm has an ECB mode. By the way, never use it.
Well, so the thing is that since it takes every block, can you go back to the
yep.
previous slide? Since it takes every block and you encrypt it,
yes.
and then you have the result on the back, on the bottom, then statistically you can say, okay, this is this type of image, so it's going to have a lot of whites, so maybe like the one that is most representative is going to be a lot of whites, and then you can decrypt part of it, and then from there decrypt another part, and from there another part, until you get the...
Yeah, of course it works for text, because especially if you know what kind of text you are looking at, if you know the language, if you know that it's going to be an invoice, if you know that it's going to be a document, you can make up some words and, well...
Yeah. It's even easier with text, because as soon as you know the language, then you're going to know the statistic that, the word V is going to come into the text, and so from there you're going to have another clue, and then the letter E and the letter A, and if you have a large text, the statistic is going to look approximately the same, and then you know like this is the E and this is the A, and from there you can decode another like other letters.
Exactly. And that's a link to an article that shows that actually what is totally obvious for ECB has been more or less exploited and in some conditions for other cryptographic modes. So you will see that you have a lot of ways to use your ciphers. You have to use some specific modes to use them because ciphers only operate on fixed blocks. So if you want to encrypt a large file, you have to combine those blocks in some way. And a lot of them are flawed. And today, the more or less consensus in the cryptographic community is that we should stop using those modes by themselves. We should use what is called AEAD, so for authenticated encryption. And it's still getting designed, so that's just to give a good example of the current state of crypto things. We have imperfect algorithms that are still extremely usable, very, very safe, if we use them in the right conditions. But if you use them in conditions that are different from what is, from what is optimal, and that changes over time, you end up with flaws, and you end up with additional risks. We are getting to that's the last part of the presentation, which is a bit longer than I expected, sorry. So passwords, as an example of crypto and bad practices. Passwords are probably the worst security practice that you can think about, because if you want a good password, well, good password must be complex enough, which means more or less that, so no, you are not going to remember that. You should have a different password for every website, for every site, for every service that you are using, so because otherwise, well, people can just jump from one website to another. And let's say that your blog on which you share your Google password is very more likely to be part of a mass attack than Google. But again, then, as your blog is the weakest link here in the security, you leak the password that you will use on other websites, and from there, problems happen. So your password should be different, your password should not be written anywhere, because otherwise you end up like that guy with the documentary with his password on the wall. And, well, all those requirements in practice are completely impossible to achieve for anybody, even very technical people don't do that. I mean, you don't have a password per website, or you have some ways in your brain, I would say, generate those passwords, which is usually very bad because, well, we are bad at generating entropy as people. So, well, so passwords are not really good. If we want to look at a bad solution for fixing passwords, we have Password Manager, so that's nice. That's some remote program that will promise you to generate good passwords for you for different websites and to hold all your passwords secure in one place. The problem is there, because if you have a master password to enter all your passwords, of course people will attack the master password. And this has been done with LastPass, like last week or 2 weeks ago, I think. Of course, well, you don't have to use a centralized password manager. You can use a local password manager, managing yourself, generate your passwords that way, and then it's more secure. It's still vulnerable against malware if you don't use hardware to protect it well. But it's still more secure, but then you're back to the previous problem. Nobody will do that, because you won't ask people to generate software, to install software, to generate their passwords, and remember to generate one different per website, and so on, and so on, and so on. So it's kind of a problem that is very hard to solve, but having a password manager is a very bad way to solve it. As a summary, today, passwords are dead because they are reused, phished, keylogged. So reused, that's obvious. Phished, well, you just get an email, you enter your password, done. Keylogged because of malware. So we have, as a community, to find better solutions. Good news is, there are some better solutions. Well, first, something that people might get some familiarity with, especially because it's widely deployed in smartphones, and Apple has been doing the here. Biometrics. So, in your opinion, we can make a quick vote. Are biometrics a login or a password? I know that's a weird question, but still.
It's a login.
It's a login.
So, who is voting for login?
Can't it be both?
Yeah.
Well, who is voting for login? It can be both. Yeah, who is voting for login? Okay, who is voting for password? I think we have more people for password than login, right? Not sure. But, well, that's okay. That's okay. I will explain. So, you can change a password. That's the idea. If you don't like a password, you can move to a new password. It's difficult to change your finger. Well, you can try, but usually, well, you have a limited number of tries, I would say. And you can try your toes, but people will look at you weirdly. I'm not sure we have a lot of science in that part of the biometrics. Then, well, even worse, if you want to achieve secure matching of biometric properties, it's totally doable. I mean, I've worked on that, on military components, actually, well, that was a passport, some passports for an airport. Well, problem is you have to use sensors that are extremely expensive, and since the price, the generic price of one good military-grade sensor will be in the 100 euros for the cheapest ones. So it's actually more expensive than your phone, which means that the sensors that you have on your phone are extremely bad, and I say extremely bad like you can actually duplicate your fingerprints using some extremely generic materials like jelly. People have actually been doing that with gummy bears, as an example. You can see people bypassing biometrics control of an iPhone using that. So, well, that gives an impression of the kind of security that you can have. So then you just think, okay, that's fine. I mean, that's not a problem. I mean, I don't want perfect security. And well, where nobody is going to find my fingerprint anywhere. Well, guess what? If you put a fingerprint reader on your phone, usually you are holding your phone. So if people want to collect fingerprint, well, they can just look behind your phone, for example. I am not fully dismissing biometrics. So I'm not saying biometrics are bad, should never be used, and so on, but biometrics should be used mostly as a catching mechanism. They can still be used to prove that you are the user in charge, and that you are the person who initially logged into the system. But if you are using biometrics for everything, since the beginning of the system, I would say if biometrics is your login, your password, and your only way to access your device, you are in a lot of trouble because you can't change it, because if it gets compromised, let's say the encryption key to your data, everybody can collect your data. So I am completely approving a system where you are entering a PIN, a pattern, a passphrase, a password, whatever. Then you are authenticating with biometrics once it powers up. But if it's not like that, my friendly security recommendation would be to answer with a friendly biometrics gesture, like, well, that's biometrics. When people are trying to tell you that you can do everything from biometrics from start to finish. Well, after biometrics, more generic things about passwords, second factors. So second factors, you have seen them all today. Codes that you get on your phones, that you get on some devices, that you get printed on paper. Why not? Say it's a good way to make the passwords, it's a good secondary way, as a name, to make passwords more secure, because then you rely on a combination of both the password and something that changes over time. Problem is, first, if you get that sent over SMS, it's expensive for the sender. It might not work, because you might just be in an area with weird coverage, and well, then it's completely unsecure under some conditions, because maybe you're aware that 2G can be completely broken today. I mean, people can be snooping on 2G without problems. That's completely doable with like a couple $1,000. So it means that if you're a target, again, yeah, well, that's not going to happen for everybody, but if someone wants to get your second factor over an SMS, they can. Then, if you have some hardware, usually the hardware is dedicated to one website, or to one party, so you can't change the key on your hardware, which means that you are going to have pockets full of second factors, so that's going to be expensive, and that's not going to be very, environment friendly as well. User experience might be confusing. You have to enter those numbers, you have 30 seconds to enter them, otherwise it's too late and you have to enter the numbers again. And if you have some network connectivity issues, or if your time is not synchronized between your phone and between your PC and something else, it can get really confusing, And then, worst part, it can still be phished, which means that people can sit in the middle, let you type your second factor, and just forward it to the target site. And in the end, you're not protected. So it's an acceptable way, I would say, to cover some password limitations, but it's not perfect. So now, some proper solutions to do it. So there are several, but I like that one because it's a standard and because it's pushed by some small companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, eBay. You have a list of like 200 companies pushing this standard, so I believe that it's going to be successful. The idea is to use crypto to change the password into, to add another layer, I would say, to the password, but to change the second factor into an actual challenge. So not just sending a message, but doing a challenge with the server. The server has your public key. You ask, you sign something, so you prove non-repudiation by signing some random sent by the server using your private key. Then the server can validate it. You generate a new key pair for every website. So for privacy levels, it's great because it means that people cannot track you. People don't know, for example, that the same user is going on Google and is buying burgers. That's very privacy sensitive issue. And you can use protected hardware as well, which means that if you don't want your private key to be leaked by malware or by an attack on your computer, you have ways to protect against that, and the protocol is completely open. So it's just a cryptographic challenge that will let you use a second factor as user-friendly, I would say, as possible. So I should have a demo of that, just to show you how it looks like. So I see if I can run it. can. So I will just go, well, just go there. No, because I need to, yeah. I need to create a new tab. Let's do something simple. So that's me. Just logging in. Okay, so up to now, nothing really different. Yeah, let me say sign in, it's okay. Session. And then, okay, yes, please go. That was. Magic happens here. So this is already integrated by Google today. I am prompted to insert a security key, which is so that device that will do the cryptographic challenge. So Google has the public key that is associated to this device, and here it will ask that device to sign something, and if my signature is correct, I will be allowed into my account. So this is USB. This could work with, this could work with pretty much everything. So this could work with BLE, with NFC. So you could, the idea is that you can use it on any kind of device. So let's go back to our presentation. If I can find my mouse, which should be over there. So let's go back. And well, I think that, yeah, the presentation is pretty nice. You'll see that the user input is quite easy to validate. And well, to qualify the user experience, I would say it was great. Well, best part of it, if, well, you're interested, you will probably be interested. I will show you how to build one of those keys from scratch, so using some open source components. And one part of my course here will be to tell you how to build that. So you will build it yourself. You will learn how to secure it, how to attack it, how to protect it, how to attack the key of your neighbor, and so on and so on. How to implement the server part of it on all your websites. So the idea is to, well, it's a good crypto protocol because it shows you how to play with keys, how to implement some real crypto on hardware, and the incentive of having it working on some big websites like Google is quite nice, I think, in my opinion. So that's a good demo project. Almost finished. Then we'll come to, well, some exercises. As a summary of all that presentation, security is about, that was more like a presentation about the generic security mindset than specific things, as you have seen, so I hope I was not too boring. The idea that you should remember is that you should know where you are, so you should know what you're doing, you should know what is around you when you are designing a system, and you should think adversarially, so you should think as people who are trying to attack you. I gave you some short samples of what you should think about, but as you design your systems and as you see more issues, as you get more familiar with that, it will become more obvious to you. But still, it's a mindset to have, and it starts with the designer. So if you should remember something, here, that's again my shirt, well, you should verify everything you do. You should not trust the code that you are running, you should not trust what you're installing. And above everything, you shouldn't be the weakest link in your program, in your code, because there is already a weakest link in the system, which is the user. And that's totally okay. It's not up to the user to be a security expert, but that was a slide that was published a few days ago during the Enigma conference, I think, which is interesting because it shows you, and it's extremely cool, what the user thinks when he sees when you see a security prompt. If you see a security prompt, it's just something that gets in the way to the birds that you are going to throw against the pigs. Yeah, I think Angry Birds was about that. It's just something in the way to the shiny stuff that the user wants to go to. So nobody wants to see a security prompt. If you see a security prompt, if you prompt the user for permissions, it's the first step to failure. And the next step to failure, which will happen 90% of the time, is the guy clicking yes. Because, well, it's annoying to read, and nobody understands permissions, and that's it. So that user experience is a complete part of the security and of the privacy process. Everything that we have talked about here should be as transparent as possible to the user and as hard to bypass as possible to the attacker. So that was it. Before we start exercises, yes?
I have a question about a second level of authentication.
Yeah.
That I've seen is it's like a pager where you have numbers that change like every minute or something like that. So when you want to log in somewhere, you have to enter your username, password, then you have to look at the key and enter the number.
Exactly. That's that part where, well, which might be difficult for some user because it's weird to enter, and that is going to be expensive because if you have something like this, most of the time it's dedicated to one site. And so if you want to widespread this kind of device to more websites, it gets tricky because then you have a lot of devices, or you have a device which can do a lot of things, then you want to put a microphone in this device, then you want to put Wi-Fi in this device, then it turns into your phone. So
I've seen that for very specialized application where not normally people log in from inside the network. And to give access outside of the network, they require that.
So the idea with those devices, so is to change that, and because this device is unique. So you have one device, and you can set a key for every, all website you want. So the idea is to generalize this concept, but make it extremely easy to use with no drivers, nothing, for any kind of website. That's definitely the point of that new, I would say, second factor mechanisms. And that's why Google is pushing it, because you can find those devices today on Amazon, for example, for a very short price. I mean, you can get one of those keys for $5 if you want. So there are a wide number of keys. I think there are probably more than 5 providers of those devices today, from prices going from $5 to $20.
And how can you verify that this key that you buy on Amazon is doing what it's supposed to do?
The protocol is very easy to verify, and the protocol is quite open.
And so, and can you have someone setting fake keys where they have some kind of sneaky snooping?
They could do that, but in that case, the way you would prove that, you would find that is by examining how the client is interacting with the key. So if you dump the USB protocol, if you dump the communication between the client and the key, you can see basically what the client is doing. And in that case, I mean, the key could still have, let's say the key has some secret commands to dump your private keys. Well, in that, to trigger it, the publisher of the key would have to install on your computer some malware that will send the command to the key or to acquire the key by any way, and then to dump the private keys that are contained into the hardware device. Because if you can, I mean, if the protocol is standard, if everybody is sending the same command, you can't really cheat. I mean, at least Google will not be the one doing the cheating here. So if you want to dump the key, you would have to somehow push the user into installing something while the key is still connected, then call that, then, and so on and so on and so on. Then the first the first security-aware user that will report that will get that manufacturer banned from basically selling those devices. And as it's a standard, you can still rely on another manufacturer, which hopefully will be more trustworthy. So that's how this is supposed to work, I would say. And that's why it's a standard. That's why also I think it's important to implement it yourself as a project. Because then you can be completely, you can even, you will be able to use your key on your own accounts. That's the idea. So you can verify everything because you build the device yourself, you build the software yourself. Then you can, the only risk would be to have some malware, I would say, on the microcontroller itself, But if we start considering that, then we are probably getting it a little bit too far. In that case, it's probably time to go back to pen and paper. But yeah, be careful of the pen because well. Put it again because it's really nice. So that's the idea. That's where you can reach me. But well, I'm still around while you will suffer on the 3 exercises that I have for you. So let's see how you want to get this organized. Well, definitely you need a computer. I will share the URL, which is there in a spot that is very hard to remember. So I don't know if you have we can use your Slack for that, or what does it do? Do you have a channel for that? Yeah. Cool. So I can paste you the URL on your channel. Just tell me which one you want to use. And you have 3 exercises, so I will shortly introduce you to the exercises so you can see how easy they are. And the fun that you are going to have for the next couple of minutes, hours, no, I hope minutes. So let's go there. It's a very nice web page. I think it took me approximately 5 seconds to enter. So we have 3 exercises. The first one is named PIN, the second one is named decrypt1, and the third one is named decrypt2. So very original names. So this is the URL that I will put into your Slack. Where do you want me to put that?
There's a channel called security.
Okay, cool. So let's do that. I just hope my Slack client didn't crash in the middle of all the Slacks. So, all that was students, security. Yes, okay. So, whoa, there are more channels here. Okay, security, yeah. Just like this. And that's it. Okay.
I will print the URL for those who are not from the school, so that you can do the exercise.
So you have 3 links here. You can start with any one. I mean, well, I think 1, 2, 3. Yeah, the first one is probably the third one is definitely the hardest. I mean, for the third one, you would have to do some coding, little coding. 1 and 2 can be done without coding. So 1 is quite easy. Well, you have a PIN code, and you have to find the PIN code. So you see that's quite easy. So that's the first exercise. No, as I said, yes, server is a bit slow, but you will get to it. The second one is a decryption, decryption exercise. So you have some things that encrypt stuff, and you have to find me, what was the original message. So you see that's also very, very easy. And the third one is, in fact, exactly the same as the second one, but with a different cipher and with a different mechanism. So, have fun. I'm still around. Hope you enjoy.